Quickly familiarize us with the Carroll Cardinal wrestling program. Sumo quickly pushes it over to Dan for this one. Familiarize us, give us a little history of the program, why it started, when it started, and what kind of kids you're working with.
Okay. We started about 7 years ago, and it was just we'd seen a big need in Carroll for youth wrestling. Coach Noggle actually is the one that first pushed me towards it and saying, hey, you guys need to start a private club. And so Steve and I start talking, and then we start talking to Sumo over here, and the next thing you know, it kind of snowballed from there. And 7 years later, we're still going at it. Before our youth thing started, before Carroll Cardinal started, there was only 18 kids out for wrestling. The last 7 years, we've had our registration's been over 100 kids every single year.
Impressive. That is terrific. So give us your guys' background in wrestling. You obviously have a passion for the sport.
I started wrestling when I was a very little kid, just like a lot of these kids do. And I started from Coon Rapids down in CRB. And I had a couple really good coaches that really inspired me my whole entire life, with Steve Cadwalder and Kurt Davis. And both of them are still involved in wrestling. Kurt Davis is over in Greene County now, but very inspiring for me to keep wrestling going, growing up with those two guys.
All right, Bryan, give us your background in wrestling and why you're into this.
Actually, I just had a couple years high school experience, and just kind of stuck with it. I really like the sport. I like what it does for kids, the discipline that it teaches them, and the hard work that it teaches them. So, not a lot of real wrestling experience, but I do love it. I do study it. I do watch it constantly. So, that's my background.
Yeah. Steve, how about you? Give us your background in wrestling.
I started when I was younger, probably third, fourth grade. Didn't go out in high school till I was a senior. I had bad knees and stuff, so not the best wrestler. I learned more being a coach than I was a wrestler, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah, the sport of wrestling, Jeff, and I think you'll agree, the discipline it takes to be a wrestler, and a good wrestler, is incredible. Talk about that.
It takes a lot of work. I mean, I think that's something a lot of people don't understand, I think. So,
Bryan, talk about that. And once again, you said you kind of studied it a lot. What is it about the sport of wrestling? I mean, the discipline aspect of it.
Well, you really notice it now. My son's a sophomore, has cut a lot of weight, and just the weight management, the time management, the amount of effort that they're putting in, 2 hours after school every day for practices, and then he's coming home and he's got to watch what he's eating, still has to do his studies, and things like that. So it's when they get to the high school level, it's time management, it's weight management, it's and the discipline and the hard work. I mean, you see some of these kids going out there and they're trying their hardest, and so is their opponent. So it's mano a mano if you want to, if you want to call it that, but it's just it's like Steve said, it's a lot of hard work, and you really notice it more as a coach and a parent than what you did as a wrestler.
Yeah,
I think.
Dan, let's talk about that, because not all that sounds fun. So, what is it that appeals to kids? How did you grow this club?
And it is, John, you're right. It's not always fun. It's a lot of hard work. I think what really appeals to the sport and the kids that actually stick with it and do it, they see all this hard work and all this not such fun things, and then all of a sudden you start winning and you start doing things by yourself, and you can't point to another guy and say he helped, he did this or I did it. It's all me. I did it. And a lot of these kids, when they first started, didn't know how to even tie their wrestling shoes. And now we just had Kieran Polking just won the national title this weekend down in Des Moines. I mean, so when you put all that stuff together, from coming at ground zero to actually winning a national title or a state title or placing very high at these things, that's really self-rewarding, because you did it. And I think that's really appealing to the kids that stick with it.
And Dan, that's one of the things that really jumps out for me with what you guys have done with this wrestling program, is the amount of kids that you're now taking to some of these major tournaments, and the success that wrestlers in this area are starting to have, not just at the little kid level, but at the high school level as well.
Yes. When we started this program, we were pretty much locally based as far as tournaments. We just go to the little ones around here, and then quickly we found out our kids are responding really well to our practices, and we just start leveling up our practices and getting harder and harder. And next thing you know, we're traveling all over the Midwest. I've been for wrestling, for youth wrestling, I've been to Las Vegas, I've been to Minneapolis, I've been to Indianapolis. We've been all over, and these kids just keep following us. And the higher we raise the bar, the more they go, the more they're doing stuff. And you can really see that on the high school end. We started when the senior class right now is in 6th grade, and you can really see the kids coming into high school right now that have Carroll Cardinal experience. They're just at a different level right now than everybody else. Parker Clucky, he just graduated or just got done with his senior year, placed 8th at the state tournament. Those guys have just barely had time with us.
Talked about the climb of the club. Obviously, kids talk to other kids and got them into the club. And maybe Bryan and Steve, you can talk about this. When did you? Talk about the progression. About you got more and more kids every single year. When did you realize that you had something special going on?
Right when we started it, we knew we had something special. That first group we had, like you said, they're now seniors. But it was it's word of mouth, kids talking to their friends and convincing their friends that maybe they're not basketball players and hey, try this and things like that. So I think that's where a lot of our growth came from was, kids and other kids seeing some of their friends having success on the wrestling mat. Well, maybe I'll try that. Maybe I'm not a basketball player. Maybe wrestling is something that I do like. And I think for the most part, once we get them in the room, they stay. Mm-hmm. I don't think we've had a lot of regression or kids. There's some that'll come out for a year or two and then say, nah, maybe not. But for the most part, I think the kids that start stick with it. And they're still in the program 2, 3, 4, and 5 years later and things like that. So,
Steve, I think the one unique thing about wrestling, too, is you're taking on kids your size. Basketball, it's easy. You could be mismatched, a kid that's 5 inches taller, and you've got no chance. But in wrestling, you've got that opportunity.
Yep, that's what's we do some duels, which is pretty cool, because then we can set up by weight, age, and experience level. So we've got some kids that can barely tie their shoes, and we can put them against another kid at the same level at some of these duels, and they can get some great matches and experience. So then, we don't want them to go out there and get pinned in 30 seconds, and then they don't want to do the sport anymore. That's why it's hard to send them to some of the tournaments. Like, when you don't have good experience, you draw back. That's why we try to. These duels are so good for things like that. So.
And one of the things, guys, that you guys are really focused on is, we talked about this before the show, kind of teaching the kids the basic fundamentals, the holds, the moves, kind of how to counter things. It's really breaking the sport down and teaching the kids at a young level how to wrestle and how to do it the right way. And I think that's the thing that's really exciting about what you guys have been doing.
Yeah, you're totally right. And the neat thing about it now is we started early with the fundamentals, and we keep bringing that through. And now I'm helping out coaching high school wrestling right now at Carroll High with Coach Noggle, and Taylor Berger's back in the area now, and he wrestled for you and I for 4 years, state champ here in town. And now incorporating with Noggle and Taylor and getting everything exactly how we want it in high school, preparing these kids, is making it so much easier when they get to high school and junior high, because they already know exactly how we want them to do things. It's a whole community area-based thing. Even over at Kemper, Gary Smith comes in a lot and helps out, and we're building these kids to do exactly what we want in high school, so you don't have to teach them as much fundamentals. When you get to high school, we can hit the road running and really do some high-level stuff.
And wrestling helps out in so many other sports as well. You talk to college football coaches, they want guys for specific positions a lot of times, linemen, linebackers, stuff like that wrestled in high school, because tackling just the base and the platform and the balance and everything that wrestling teaches is huge.
Yeah, especially for linemen out there. You don't want to get close to a wrestler, man. They'll take you down to nothing flat. So,
yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, if you go back and look at articles or talk to coaches' interviews and listen to their interviews, they're always looking for the wrestlers. Yeah. I think numerous coaches, Kirk Ferentz and the Iowa State guys and Nebraska guys, even, they come in and that's one of their first questions. What other sports do they play?
Yep.
And I know you're a big proponent of it too, of multiple sport athletes, and I know it's not always that, but it helps a lot just to get better at each sport, and then that does parlay into being better in the next sport.
Yeah, and I was going to say I was at regional volleyball tournaments down at Des Moines this past weekend, and watching some of the teams I helped coach play, and was talking to several college coaches down there. And when I was talking to them about recruiting, that was the first thing that they say they always ask is how many sports do you play? What other activities are you involved in? That's the type of kids that they're looking at. But I did want to bring up a quick story for you guys when you talk about, wrestling and other sports. They didn't have wrestling where I went to high school, so I wasn't, involved in it. But I played basketball, and I was pretty decent. But I remember when
so he says.
Yes, but after I got
nobody's actually seen him play, by the way.
After I got out of college, I was talking to Trevor Vanami, and he wrestled years ago over at Ogden, and he was a really good wrestler over there, and I worked with him. And I said, everybody always said when I was around the farm all the time as a kid, so even though I was 118 pounds then, I was fairly strong for my size, and I'm like, everybody thought I would be a good wrestler, and he's like, no, you wouldn't have been able to do it. And I'm like, oh, I bet you I could hang with you for a little while. He had me down on the ground, and I was tapping out in less than 6 seconds. I'll just tell you that.
You guys have put your club to the test a lot of times in these meets you go travel to, but that takes a lot of support from parents too, doesn't it? I mean, you guys got to have that support.
I
if
think
it's not there.
That's one of the biggest deals too with the group that we kind of have, the older group. They bought into what we were selling. So then and I think that's where we're at now. Some of our younger groups are a little bit smaller. I think we've got to get them back to where they're buying into what we're selling, or to believe it, or the groups that love, that are going to be like, yeah, we're going to join this, and then they get involved. I mean,
and it's truly a family atmosphere with us. I mean, we hang out on the weekends. I mean, this club grew way more into just being wrestling. We have so many friends now and family members, it seems like, that we just everywhere we go, and it doesn't matter if it's wrestling now in the summer, we're hanging out all the time. We just go to everybody's houses. It's just a big family atmosphere all the time with the Cardinals.
A typical Carroll deal of getting together
let's get the microphone over to you here. So
a typical Carroll deal of getting family together and drinking and having fun, and the kids are doing stuff. I mean, that's kind of how this works, I think. So,
guys, when does your season run? When does the Cardinal season run? What's the length of it? Year round?
we start wrestling for the Cardinals before the high school, or about the same week as high school, and we're just got done this weekend. So we went past high school, and we're only practicing 2 times a week most of the time. But so it's a long season, and then we got some free kids that are going to try some freestyle and do some freestyle, like Dan's boy and stuff. So, I mean, it can be an all-year deal if you want it to be. So
now, anybody out there listening, a parent that wants to get their child in it, if their kid's showing an interest in it, how do they get involved with the Carroll Cardinals? Who do they need to get in contact with? What do they need to do?
We send out the sign-up sheets to the teachers, to both schools, and look us up on Facebook. That's probably the easiest. We got Carroll Cardinal Wrestling Club on Facebook. That's our main communication with everybody and stuff. So that would be the one, or get a hold of one of us 3 or whatever. So we'll try to answer the questions.
Kindergarten through 8th grade. That's what's so cool about this program, Jeff, is they do all the different ages. Steve, I understand you do the kindergartners. Can you send us video of your practice sometime? Because I think it would be hilarious.
There might be some parents that have some of that. That's what I said. I don't know how I drew the short straw of this when we started to get the kindergarten, because I don't have a lot of patience. But
it's got to be like herding cats a little bit, doesn't it?
It seems like you just put it away and you do it. So I guess if you like what you're doing, it doesn't matter what it is.
So what do you guys get out of this? What do you guys get personally out of this? Steve, we'll start with you.
I got 3 kids in it, so that's my benefit.
It's a chance to share with your kids, yeah. Bryan, how about you?
Yeah, I think what Steve said. I have a son that's gone through the Cardinals program, is now a sophomore at Carroll High. But for me, it's the fun atmosphere. There's nothing better than going to a gym on a Saturday and spending. It sounds funny, but spending 6-8 hours there with a group of 20 or 30 kids and watching them have fun and make new friends and it's crazy. Like Dan said, it's a family thing, but they make friends from wherever. I mean, you go to these tournaments, you see the same kids a lot, and they start hanging out, and all of a sudden they're good friends with somebody from Panora or somebody from Council Bluffs and things like that, and it turns into a great thing for not only us but for everybody that's involved.
How about you, Dan? What do you get out of those?
Well, when I originally started out, just like these guys, I had a son in it, and now he's in high school. But really what it transformed to me is getting out of it is seeing kids progress through the sport. You know, we had kids, and like I said, they have a hard time tying their shoe, and the next thing you know, Rick, and they're jumping in your arms because they placed at the state tournament or they won a national title. Things like that, I just can't replace now. I just want to keep doing that over and over and over. Those moments where somebody accomplished something that they've been dreaming and working so hard, that's what motivates me and keeps me going. These kids, I just, now being around them all the time, I just don't want to let them down, so we just keep going. We just keep going and just keep making new plateaus, and that's, I guess, what I really get out of it is just seeing these kids accomplish so many things.
Dan Drake, Bryan Coolman, Steve Klauke joining us here this morning. Jeff, it'd be nice to see all the weight classes filled every time we go out to cover a wrestling match.
I think what these guys are doing is going to help with that. It is tough sometimes when you go to cover a wrestling meet and you sit there through a try and you get, there's been nights where I've had 8 matches throughout the entire night because of all of the, the forfeits and everything else. So with what these guys are doing, I think they're going to build the sport back to where you'll get to go and you'll get to watch really great wrestling all night long. So I thank these guys for what they're doing.
Absolutely. Look on Facebook. Just look for Carroll Cardinals. Is that what we look for?
Yep.
And you can get more information about how to get your child involved with it. Carroll Cardinal is a great program here locally.